And we back. And, no, I'm just kidding. It's at the movies with Matt and Ryan.
Oh God.
And we're not on the radio. But as we promised, we are doing podcasts once again for the next month. And we got the great segment, the 3-in-1.
Oh God. Yeah, I don't know if it's a podcast, but a video, I guess.
The 3-in-1
video, the audio.
Yeah.
I have food in my teeth, so could you talk for a second?
Yeah, Matt's here. We have 3 movies that we are going to review that we've seen over the past week. 3 Billboards in Ebbing, Missouri.
Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and Sweet Virginia.
Yeah.
But the order we will be reviewing them is Jumanji, 3 Billboards, and Sweet Virginia.
Oh. All right.
What do you mean, oh?
No,
Jumanji is the most relevant because it came out yesterday.
Yeah, I guess.
It's still kind of in wide release, but it's kind of fading. But I'm sure it'll be a relevant movie for the next couple of months. And then Sweet Virginia's been on the VOD circuit for the past month. So,
yeah.
But we'll start with Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. I guess it's a reboot, a spin-off, maybe. I don't know. So it's always hard to define the lines of these brand reboot stuff. But it's the reboot of Jumanji, which came out in 1995, the Robin Williams film. This one follows 4 teenagers who discover an old video game and are literally drawn into the game's jungle setting. And they're transformed into these adult avatars. And to escape Jumanji, they have to team up, work together, and complete some missions.
Yay.
Yeah. I guess that's it.
Yeah. This movie was boring.
Yeah, this was pretty rough, and I was surprised considering.
I can't even. We saw it. What's it? 9 o'clock. We saw it probably 7 hours ago. I don't even remember it.
Well, leading up to this week, the movie's been getting good reviews, and currently it's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It has about an 80%, which is pretty impressive. Especially considering that most of the holiday releases have not been very well received. I kind of hated this movie.
This was the most by the book studio movie ever. It pissed me off more than my other worst movies of the year because it just wasn't. There was no risk taking. There was no originality. It was just flat out. Let's just give a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, it was middling to the point of just being annoying to watch. Especially because you have a pretty talented cast assembled here. I think the movie puts a lot on the plate of the cast to kind of make jokes out of everything, but the material here just isn't very good. The script was collaborated on by 4 writers, which is always a really bad sign for a movie, to be honest. That means there's too many voices, too many cooks in the kitchen, and it usually muddles material. That's not really the problem here. The problem is there really is no good material, which is kind of bizarre. For the most, I think Jack Black and Kevin Hart, they're pretty much one-note characters, and they're playing the same joke over and over again. And they're kind of left on the wayside. And then I think the other 2 stars, Dwayne Johnson and Karen Gillan from Guardians of the Galaxy, they're just kind of the straight men, and they just seem pretty bored.
Also, the antagonist in this movie was worse than a Marvel antagonist.
They really gave no fucks.
It was awful. I don't even know. I know that wasn't even the worst part, but. That wasn't even. There was no effort put in that either. It's
there was no effort put in the whole movie. To be honest, I think the cast is okay, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think even they are kind of resting on their laurels and playing. They all do versions of performances they've done before, and Jack Black's pretty much is representing a teenage girl, and that's one joke that they just play over and over and over again, and it really is never that funny.
No.
I mean, I think the reason this movie is working for people is the cast, and maybe they do have enough charm.
Yeah.
To make this watchable for you, but for me, it's just like, ugh. I just felt so bad that they really had nothing to work with.
I don't know what a redeeming quality of this is. Maybe like the CGI was okay. I don't know.
I thought the movie was pretty ugly, to be honest.
I don't know. Like it was. If I'm just thinking of like a positive, I'm like kind of digging.
I thought the cast was fine. I don't think they gave bad performances. I just think they were stuck in some really bad material. I think the movie was really poorly directed too. Jake Kasdan, he's done a few good movies. I liked Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, and I thought Bad Teacher was okay. But he really hasn't made a movie of this scale before, and you can kind of tell because the movie looks ugly. He doesn't have much of a voice behind the camera, visually speaking, and like everything from like just the regular scenes to like the action set pieces are just kind of bland looking and unexciting. So that hurts as well.
Yeah, I don't even. Yeah, it's not much to say.
The story hits. You could pretty much time your watch to the story beats. It hits all the beats you kind of
the romance
from
the romances.
All the stuff you would expect from this, and the jokes are really stale and cliche. And it just doesn't seem like anyone behind this movie really gave much of a shit. Like it feels like it's really cashing in on its brand and the stars. Like there's not a moment where I thought there was an interesting idea or a creative spark or anything like that. It was just the most, by the numbers studio product you could possibly see.
And it's like, it's one of those movies where, like, walking out, like, usually I could tell if I don't like a movie that, like, critics like, I'd be like, oh, okay, I can see why they might have liked it. I don't know, like, why they like this movie. I mean, I know you say the charm, but, like, I walked out and I was like, I don't know why they like this. Like,
I mean, comedy is super subjective, so some jokes are going to work for people, some jokes aren't. Like, I can't beat up critics, I guess, too bad for that, because I mean I like Dirty Grandpa and Zoolander too. There's been a lot of comedies that have come along that have gotten really shitty reviews, and I still stood up for them. So, and I think though how good the reviews are has been kind of overstated. I mean, the movie has a average score of 6.2 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is, I mean, fairly middling, to be honest. That's why I think people. You see the 80%, the certified fresh, it's like, oh shit, this must be good. But I feel like that average critic rating is always the better indicator of how good a movie actually is.
Yeah. Still.
But yeah, I mean, it'll probably be on my worst of list. I didn't hate it, I would say, but I was, for the most part, really bored and just kind of disappointed because I think.
Yeah, I was excited for this.
I mean, this could have been fun. Like, this could have been a fun movie.
Yeah.
So what's your rating?
I'm gonna go with a 1.5.
What? Okay, you're lower than me. I go 2.5.
Oh, okay.
I didn't hate it. Like it's not a movie I can like a few hours after seeing. I'm not mad, nothing like that. But it just was uninspired, and it was frustrating in that sense how uninspired that the material was. But 2.5 for me. I'm guessing you'll expect that movie on both of our worst of lists come end of the year. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see where they rank for both of us. I have an idea where I'm putting it, but our next movie is way to go from 0 to 100. We have a big Oscar contender: 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, the latest from Seven Psychopaths and In Bruges director-writer Martin McDougall. The film follows Frances McDormand, who plays Mildred Hayes. She's a mother who her daughter almost a year ago was murdered and raped, and her case has yet to be solved. So in an effort to kind of put some pressure on the police force, Mildred rents out 3 billboards and writes kind of critical messages about the police in an effort to try to inspire some much needed conversation about this case. It's pretty much the setup.
I like this movie. Not as much as Lady Bird, but I liked it. The director.
That was kind of random.
Well, no, I'm just comparing it to Lady Bird because that was the last Oscar contender I saw. I just thought of that. The directing was really well done. I thought the second third and last third were really good, and I thought the first third was iffy. I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't know where the movie was kind of going, and then when something happens, then in the middle of it, it gets better. But the performances in here were pretty great. Frances McDormand, Harrelson, Rockwell, they all did pretty great. But I think you liked this more than I did.
Yeah, I love this movie. Frankly, I mean, it will probably be in my best ever list. I think I probably my lone issue is that I think the beginning of the movie it does take a bit to get its rhythm, get its feet going. But I don't think the beginning was bad necessarily. I just think it pales in comparison to the rest of it. But I think the final hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes or whatever was one of the best movies I've seen this year, frankly.
Wow.
First off, I really have to credit Martin McDonagh. He's just such a distinct storyteller. I mean, his name isn't up there with the Tarantinos of the world, but I really think it should be, especially considering the run of movies he's on. I mean, he's had 3 really great movies, and this might be his best one yet. I mean, I personally enjoy Seven Psychopaths more, but I think just substance-wise, I think this one has a real impact. It does feature that kind of darkly acidic comedic sensibility that people who've seen McDonagh's work before are used to. There's a lot of zinging lines, so there's very vulgar remarks, but
yeah,
these moments they feel cohesive with the characters. They never are like forced or disingenuous. It doesn't feel like something someone wrote. It feels like what people actually say. So I give that, because I feel like writers at times can be very overly clever with dialogue, but I don't think that was the case here. I think this narrative, oof, what a fantastic story! I love not only his direction in the storytelling, but just the narrative he writes. This is honestly one of the most unpredictable movies. It really left me on the edge of my seat throughout.
Yeah.
And I love kind of the dramatic irony and of all of it, and just how much of a simple remark can end up coming to play in the end of the movie and having a major impact. It's just like, it's one of those movies where everything feels connective and cohesive, but again, it's not in an overly cutesy way. It's in a very genuine and realistic way. I mean, the performances are knockouts. Frances McDormand and Sam Rockwell are both the favorites to win for their respective categories of Best Actress and Best Supporting Actor, and I think they're very deserving. McDormand, I feel like this movie's kind of written for her, because she's shown before in movies like Almost Famous and Fargo that she can be very dynamic. And here I think she masterfully nails that balance between having this kind of angry persona while showing a more sensitive side, and I think she really commands the screen every time she's in the movie.
I had an issue with Sam Rockwell's character at one point.
Really? All right.
Just I thought his arc was a little rushed. I felt like he had this like persona for like a good portion of the movie, and then all of a sudden he kind of just changed at the end. And I thought that part was rushed. And that's just my personal preference, maybe. But
this is where we disagree, because I don't think the character really changes. I think he, in his own mind, thinks he's changing. But I think this movie does a good job of creating characters that are really not that good of people, but very interesting to follow.
Yeah.
And I think it stays true to these characters, even towards the end. Like, the movie doesn't end on a clean note. It doesn't end in the kind of way you would expect a movie like this to end. But I really think Sam Rockwell's character was great. I was going to get more into his performance in a bit, but I think I know what you're talking about. I think personally, it's how I read it. It's he convinced himself that he has changed, but in reality, I don't think the character really takes that kind of turn, which is shown by the ending of the movie, where he makes certain decisions that aren't reflective of that change that he thought.
Yeah.
It wasn't a real change of character. It was in that moment he felt, yeah, I can do this. I'm changing, and I think that's a realistic thing. I think people can kind of flip a switch in their mind and convince themselves of, striving for greatness. And I think the movie has. I mean, there isn't really a thematic message like kind of social justicey or whatever that a lot of Oscar movies have, but I think it does have a very complex moral compass. I emotionally, I think this movie really resonates. Just seeing these characters and their kind of this sad balance they have between just this raw anger and their kind of introverted sadness that they're hiding with this anger. And I think the movie also touches on kind of the dangerous means of getting justice for what you believe in. I thought that was done very well, and I think it did add a lot of depth to the movie as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that was another thing too. I was figuring like what was his message in this movie, but I mean, I guess it's kind of open for interpretation.
I don't think it has like a message like that, but I just think
not like a deep message, but
more. I think it's pretty interesting and well done. Like,
yeah.
In some senses, it's a better biblical movie than Mother because you could the wrath of God and of McDormand's character, stuff like that. I mean, I think there's the complexity of it is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the movie still. I that was just and I feel like Rockwell was a big part of the movie too. And
what do you mean?
Like I thought he was a big part of the movie. So like my personal preference, I thought his character was rushed. I thought that was kind of an issue, but I still like
I disagree. I've explained.
I know, and I know we disagree on that, but that was just
yeah. But I don't think that's how it was intended. I don't.
Whatever.
Okay, that's not it. Well, I'm trying to have a discussion about it.
I just told you what I thought. I don't want to spoil the movie. I don't want to tell him how he was.
All right.
Well, I don't want to say like what he was and then what he turned, like what he eventually, the decisions he eventually made. Like that'll just spoil the movie.
I think people, no matter what, will get some enjoyment out of this. I mean, I think there's a lot more to it that people will, some people will get and some people won't. That's fine, But yeah, I think this is a fantastic movie. I think it very much worthy of Best Screenplay Oscar, and then I definitely would like to see McDormand and Sam Rockwell walk away with the prizes as well. And this movie has a great sense of place as well in Missouri. It feels very palpable and realistic, and I like how it connects with kind of the real world race issues. So
yeah,
just some closing thoughts.
Yeah.
No, so what's your rating?
I'll give it a 7.5.
All right. I'm at a 9. I love this movie. It'll be in my top 10 probably for sure.
Ooh.
But yeah, really, really great, fantastic writing, fantastic acting, really strong direction. I don't have much to really complain about. Fantastic movie.
Woo. This next movie. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, we'll see.
Sweet Virginia.
The next movie, Sweet Virginia, starring John Bernthal from The Walking Dead or Punisher, as Netflix fans may know him by, and Christopher Abbott, who I'm personally a very big fan of. But the film follows a former rodeo star who's now kind of, he's definitely out of the prime of his life, one could say, but he runs a motel and he befriends this kind of mysterious character named Elwood, who we learn quickly into the movie that this is not someone to be trusted. This is a dangerous individual who, can inflict some real pain. And I think the story written by the China brothers is a pretty interesting narrative that connects a lot of different characters together. But yeah.
Me and Matt are going to disagree on this one. I thought this was pretty mediocre. But I'll tell you what I liked. I liked the atmosphere that the movie set. I liked the music in it, and I liked the performances. It kind of reminded me a little bit of It Comes at Night as far as atmosphere. But I thought the narrative was really weak.
Why is that? I don't see. Well, I
First of
guess we'll
all,
touch into that more.
what's up?
I mean, I'll touch into that more, but after I talk about my positives. But I agree with you about the direction. First timer Jamie M. Dag, I think does a really fantastic, or not first timer. He did a movie before this, but I think visually the movie looks fantastic. I love kind of this feels definitely more like an old school movie. Just it's very much a slow burn. It's very patient, setting things up and kind of letting things play out in a more subdued nature rather than kind of having these really big moments. The movie kind of does start and end with a bang, but in between that, it's a lot of mostly just interesting reflection by these characters. But yeah, I thought the direction was great. And performance-wise, everyone is very good. John Bernthal is solid. Imogen Poots, Rosemary DeWitt are very good. But I think the standout is my boy Christopher Abbott. He just has such a intense presence. Like every movie he's in, like I feel like he really, really brings it. Like he has such a dynamic energy, and he always like here he really steals the stage as Elwood. And I think I credit this movie for really unnerving some interesting aspects about these characters. I mean, I feel like by the end of the movie, I really got to learn about who these people are and what drives them. And, I thought it was interesting, and it went to some really dark places that I really didn't expect it to.
I disagree.
I
don't think I learned anything about these characters besides the fact that John Bernthal was a rodeo rider in the past, and Christopher Abbott needs money. That's all I got out of this.
I disagree with that completely. The movie doesn't. I'm not talking about in terms of like their background. I'm talking about in terms of what drives them, what makes them act. Why do they act the way they act? Like especially with Christopher Abbott's character, I got a real sense of his loneliness, and I really like the scenes with him and Bernthal as he's trying to kind of befriend him and have a connection. Like he's this person who is kind of an outcast, and I mean, in some sense, his arc is kind of like Robert Pattinson's in Good Times, I guess, in a way. He's this kind of outcast who's just trying to make it by, and but doing so in the worst possible of ways. Yeah, I think with John Bernthal's character too, there's a lot of moments where we hear about the pain and anguish from his past, the certain things that have happened to him. I don't want to spoil details per se, but I think the movie does. I especially the major two characters, I think, have very interesting backgrounds, and I did get a real sense of what drove them and why they act the way they act.
I thought the movie was pretty predictable. I don't want to like trash this movie because I understand it's not like the typical studio movie, but like it's just I'm not gonna give it credit if like the plot was similar to other plots I've seen, and it was like the ending was so predictable.
I don't think the movie's that predictable. I'm going to disagree with you on that. I don't think it ends. It does not end in the predictable sense that you would expect. It does not end with the kind of big. I think the ending itself was very lifelike. It was kind of small, intimate. It wasn't this big kind of roaring set piece that you would expect from a slow burn movie that has all this kind of tension building throughout. And you complained about the narrative being boring. I thought it was interesting. I was engaged throughout. That's why I didn't really have a problem with it being predictable, because if I'm more engaged in a movie, I'm more focused on what's going on and less what's going to happen. Like I'm interested in what's going to happen, but I'm into what the narrative beats and what's happening and kind of processing each scene as they come. I like how the China brothers, they really make this kind of interconnected, very lived in world. Like all these characters have an interesting relationship with each other, and we kind of see how those dynamics play out throughout the movie. I do think Rosemary DeWitt and Imogen Poots, the two main female leads of the movie, their characters end up being a bit of side notes from a depth perspective. I think it's more of a movie about Bernthal and Abbott, and I think that's disappointing. And you're right in some senses where this is definitely not the most original movie in the world, but I think it's executing a kind of familiar idea with some invigorated style and frankly a lot of intelligence as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like the direction that this director took. I think that like I wasn't like wowed that at all, really. And I think the movie was a little too short. I feel like I could have been more emotionally invested in these characters with more information. Like, I understand that, like
I don't think you need more.
Abbott, yeah, but I understand he's lonely, and like I understand Bernthal's history with like the bull riding and everything. But like, if that's all I got, like,
yeah, but
I've seen these character arcs before.
It's a movie. I like that this movie doesn't spoon feed you information. Rather, it's how these characters act to find who they are. Like, I think that's a lot more. That's a lot more interesting way to develop.
But I've seen that before too, though.
Well, you see that in a lot of good movies, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but if I've seen it before, it's gonna get like stale at some point.
But if you've seen before, I don't.
Well, like you said, Good Time was like that. I saw.
I mean, they're not very comparable, and I think they're different. That was just
pacing wise, it was very similar to It Comes at Night. Like I just there's
pacing.
Yeah, like the slow build. Like there's just a lot of things that this
movies
movie
have slow build up. I
know, but there's a lot of aspects of this movie that reminded me of past movies. I just feel like
I think this movie's very original and intelligent with the way it approaches the characters. I think there's a lot like. You watching each scene carefully, there's a lot of little character gestures that really I think define the characters and a lot of interesting nuance. I think this movie does have a lot more ambition than like the trailers let on. I think it does have something to say, and I was really engaged with it throughout. Wasn't a perfect movie by any means, but I don't think you're giving enough credit, to be honest. I think from a craftsmanship perspective, it's also really well executed. Definitely, especially for an independent movie, really top notch visually, the sound, great score. It's the same brothers who did the Green Room, interestingly enough. But yeah, it's fantastic execution. Like I said, the side characters, they don't have the impact that I think the film intends. And I also think that it isn't super original. There are moments that are predictable, but for most of the movie, I was really engaged.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, do you have more of a case? I feel like you should have more to say. I don't. You know, to my rebuttal, you just kind of scoff. So
to what you said?
What I just said
about it being. What we basically just said the same thing. I think there's a lot of nuance
to the movie. I think there's a lot to it.
I don't think so at all. I explained to you why I don't think so. I think the
yeah, but I don't like what you're like. You want you want more information about these people, but I think it's really capturing
if this is a movie about the characters, I think it's important that we know a little more about them and what their motives are.
I think you. Oh, I 1,000% disagree. You completely understand their motives and why they act the way they act. See, I disagree with that completely. And I think, especially with Christopher Abbott's case, the less you know, the better. It makes the character more interesting, more mysterious, and just frankly more unpredictable. Like in some sense, I don't know how far this character was going to go, but once you see it, and kind of the way he interacts, and especially towards the latter half, as the character kind of really becomes unraveled. It's fascinating to see.
Like, but okay, so we realize he's kind of a bad guy.
I don't want to spoil.
But I'm not spoiling it.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I'm not spoiling it.
It was.
I'm just saying that I wish we understood why he was doing some of the things he was doing.
I think it's completely understandable.
Because he's lonely. Because he's lonely, Matt. That's why. But
I think that there's some that's part of why he connects with Bernthal's character. I just think you see how just unhinged the character is emotionally. Like you see it. There's a certain conversation he has with his mother about an hour into the movie that really reveals that too. Even though he previously
that was the most we got out of it. But but
that's all you need. You don't need them to spoon feed you a lot of information. the movie builds up the character very well. I feel like.
All right, so if you're not going to give us a lot in the middle, at least by the end, we can get a little bit of an understanding of like.
I think
why.
I always had an understanding. I mean, maybe you didn't understand it, but I thought
I understood it. I just thought it was a little simplistic.
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
But I think the movie, it doesn't spoon feed you information. It rather lets the characters' actions define who these people are, and I think that's a good way to tell the story. And I think the movie in general, it feels like an interesting. It's a throwback in some senses. It does feel like kind of a grittier noir from like the 80s, something kind of like that. But it, like I said, the filmmaking is very impressive. And yeah, I think it's a really good movie, and I hope people check it out on VOD. I think people will enjoy it. I didn't really have a problem with the length either. Like I think the pacing was very tight, and it moved well throughout. I think a slow burn like this, if it goes on for too long, that's when it starts to lose you. I think you kind of need this tight of a pace to keep things moving, to keep the audience engaged. You know, if this was like a 2-hour movie, I don't know if the movie would have the material per se to really last that length running time. You know, I think it works really, really well as a tight 90 minutes. You know, I agree with your points involving the side characters. Personally, I thought Bernthal's character and Habit's character were really fascinating, interesting, and well-realized characters. And I liked their interactions. I think Bernthal's character, too. I think he gives a really underrated and understated performance. And I really was fascinated by kind of the anguish and the loss he showed throughout the movie.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't bad. I just wish there was more.
He wasn't bad. He was good.
I know, but I just wish in Abbott's character, because Abbott did such a great job performing the character. I just wish he had more of an arc, to be honest.
I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that. Like, what more could you have wanted? Like, I don't really understand it.
Okay, but like he's doing these actions in the movie, but like, why? Like, that's all I'm asking.
I think they show why, though. I mean, not to really spoil, but like, you see how he's unhinged. Like,
but like he needs money, obviously. But why does he need money? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why does he need this?
Yeah, but that's not something you really. Why do you need to know that? Like, I don't understand.
Because like it makes the movie more interesting, Matt. Because this. No, listen to me. Because this movie is so like unoriginal in the sense that I've seen the plot. I've seen the plot, this type of plot before. I would like to have more interesting characters. That's my problem with the movie. Like sometimes the plot, it may not matter, but if the characters are more interesting, you know. But I think in this movie, neither was true.
What's up? I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. But I don't think you need to know about Abbott's characters. Like I said, his actions define who he is, but also I think the movie does develop the character. I just think it does so in a way where it doesn't have to say things. It doesn't have to spell things out. It kind of, things progress in a very naturalistic way, which I enjoyed. Like, I don't think, like, it didn't feel the need to stop and be like, let's talk about Christopher Abbott's past, because I think the way that the character is, he works a lot more as this kind of mysterious.
It's not even his past, but like even just more about his present. Even like, why is he doing the things he's doing?
I think it's completely understandable. I think I just think so. I think you really.
There just seemed to be more that like to it besides the fact that he, needed someone to like talk to. Like I just feel like there was more.
I think there is more to it. I just think maybe you didn't really pick up on it. But
oh my god.
I think there is a lot to it.
Maybe I didn't. I don't know, but
I think, I think maybe you're looking for these bigger, complex answers, but like, not every movie needs to have that. Like, you kind of get a state of his, emotional and mental instability, and I think that was fascinating enough. Like, I didn't really need defined answers about that. Like, it's not that kind of movie. Like, it just isn't. Like, it's more about these characters and how they act in a situation, not lesser so who are these people, give me their their complete backstory, I need to know every detail. Like I feel like the movie gives you enough to really understand who these characters are, and in this heightened dramatic situation, their personalities are really well defined and shown.
All right. I think we've said our stuff.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, one person
I feel like
makes
your goal...
their case and laughs. The other.
Well, no, I don't know. Like I've said, I feel like I just feel like whenever we argue about a movie, you try to make me bring the score up by the end.
Well, yeah, I'm going to argue for the movie because I want people to see it. I
think
very passionate.
I know.
About the movie.
I'm not going to detract people from seeing this movie. I think people should because they may like it. I mean,
well, there you go. That's my job, is to not only persuade the audience but to persuade you. I'm gonna work my best.
Maybe I'll watch it again, but I don't know.
All right, well, there you go. That speck of doubt. That's all I needed.
All right. There you go.
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie a lot. 7.5 out of 10. Good film.
I'm at a 5.5.
All right. See, before you were at like a 5.
I was at 5. I went up a half
point. There you go.
I like the atmosphere, and there were some good aspects, but people should see it.
I was very engaged in the movie.
All right. Well, that's our 3. We'll have plenty of more where that came from. We still have like a month off, so we'll be doing more of these. So keep looking. I'll put this video up as soon as possible, and we'll review another one shortly. But you can look at this and our past content on At the Movies with Matt and Ryan. Like, share, subscribe. And if we don't have another review, I mean, I guess at this time, enjoy your Christmas. So
yeah, have a good one.
So see you guys.